the Waldeboro Planning Board of September 8th, 2022 to order. Believe we have a quorum. Johnny, Jeff, Barbara, and myself present. So that's 4. And we may have a 5th joining us later. Do we have any adjustments to the agenda, Max?
All right, back to
Did he get his name just then?
Mark's name, or
Yeah, did Jim mention Mark's name?
no?
I didn't know if it was procedure or not, so.
Yeah,
No, we'll introduce new members in the
Okay.
housekeeping items.
okay.
But
We don't need you for the quorum, apparently.
the only adjustment, Jim, and I mentioned this to the board through an email last week. We have 2 representatives here for 1607 Atlantic Highway we're not really a pre-application nor an actual application. It's more of just a request for the board. But that can be scheduled after we handle the site plan matters.
Okay, sounds like a good place to put it. Next thing on the agenda is general citizen comments, anything not having to do with the agenda that's been published. Anyone in the audience or online have anything that they want to bring up not related to the agenda? That's the usual reaction. So the first thing on the agenda is the pre-app subdivision amendment for East Ridge Mobile Home Park. Who's going to be presenting that?
So we have Fred Betts in the audience tonight.
Okay.
That he will be representing. Something I just want to clarify for the planning board, because some weren't here when Fred was initially here back in January of 2020. The planning board initially rejected this application amendment because at the time there were no list of code violations, and I believe I sent an email as a follow-up to everyone that shows the updated letter from the code enforcement officer about the violations. So tonight, this is just to see, one, if that satisfies this current planning board's request to have those code issues updated, or if, and the second item is if there's going to be anything substantially necessary for this amendment. So Fred is in the audience. Fred, if you don't mind coming up to the podium.
Max, before we do that, Fred, go ahead to the podium. But I want to clarify a couple of points. My recollection of that meeting in January 2020 is that we strongly urged Mr. Best to bring the park into compliance. And with that, the board might consider his application more favorably. It wasn't a do it and you'll get it. It's a step in the right direction. There were so many complaints, as I recall, from the residents and the abutters that really was also an important part of the reason for the planning board rejecting the request. So just to set the ground for those that weren't here back then. Fred, go ahead.
Do you have a copy of that
Of the,
report from code enforcement officer?
no, I sent an email out to everyone, but I can go get it printed if you need. As long as everyone's fine with Fred talking, and I'll be back in just a moment. Or if you want to just.
Okay. So I was here in January, over 2 years ago. The code enforcement officer had issues. I think we've addressed most of those. You got a letter from Stan Waltz. There's a few issues in there that haven't been addressed, and most of these are steps that the town feels aren't up to code. And Chip has stepped in and taking care of most of them, and they're gonna deal with the rest of them, except a couple of them are gonna do it themselves, and they have been dragging their feet. And I went to Max, said, well, have we got, there was a whole bunch of other issues, those have all been addressed. Are you ready? Do you think I'm ready to go to the planning board? And Max kicked it over to Stan, and Stan wrote that letter. If you want every issue addressed, then we'll have to just come back later. That's where we're at. And I got one thing in Stan's letter about the septic field. I made an email here. Not I made it, but I brought copies of it. Before I read that, we hadn't talked about this for 2 years. And I guess I would like to not have this held up for this issue and let Stan and I work this out, because it's not, there's not a problem. I don't understand why this was brought to the board again.
So this is all the same page, right?
Yeah, they're all
Copies?
copies.
Okay. Thank you.
So we had 2 issues here. One was an error in the original plan. And I don't know if you guys have this kind of map
Yeah.
with all the lots that Daryl McKinney numbered. And Max, I emailed him earlier, he's got it somewhere. There was an electrical plan, a septic plan,
Thank you.
a stormwater plan, and then the layout of the park. And somehow on the signed copy, there was a lot 30 from a previous application. I was 16 months with the planning board. I don't see anybody here that was here 2002 when this was all going on. And somehow the wrong plan got recorded, and the lot 30 is on the plan, and they're missing a lot. Should have been 4, should have been split into two lots, and 30 omitted. That would still be the 40 units. It's just, and when I was building it, the plan I had all the correct lot layout. The electrical is all laid out to the electrical plan, the septic plan. This is just a mistake that was made. And trying to think, we had a different planning guy. What was his name? He used to be from Friendship.
John Black.
John Black. He was the guy that was running the paperwork then. And I think it just got mixed up. That's what happened. So this would correct that. And at that meeting, we did talk about that. And I guess it was almost approved, or pretty much approved, but we all decided to come back again. So here we are on that issue. The other issue is about me removing the 55 age requirement in my park. And that was put on the plan because Lee Smith asked me to do that, the former town manager. And I did put it on there thinking that I would never change that. And here I am years later. And one of the biggest problems I've had with it, and this isn't the whole argument, but people have been in the park, parents with their children in their late 40s. The parent dies. Now there's nobody in the lot that's 55. So it's just creating problems to try to keep the park 55. And what do you do with these people that are all of a sudden, they're orphaned, I guess is a good way, but they come into the park or the trailer's in there legally. So, so I guess the big question to you is, do you want to go forward with this next month, or we'll go back and try to rectify these things so Stan gives you a 100% letter saying that they're all dealt with? I don't care either way. It's just, I thought we were almost there, and then this is where we're at.
So do I understand this correctly, Fred, that you're asking for 2 things?
Yeah.
Change these lots where these corner lots.
Can I get closer? Because I can hardly hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Freaking mask.
What we're talking about
Yeah.
is this lot doesn't exist. The sewerage is not there, the wiring is not there. This one,
The common area.
Yeah.
Yep, that one.
this one has on the electrical plan, and you have it somewhere in your box because it was here
Yes,
2
they
years
all-
ago.
They all have a copy.
Okay, so what we're talking about is amending the recorded plan and drawing a line here
This
and
isn't-
coming up with language.
This isn't the same.
Right, 4 would become 4 and 6.
I see.
This one would become a common area. The other thing is, I built this whole park, so I know it really well. But the power comes up from down by my water building. And the 7,400 volt goes all the way around here, comes around and comes right through this lot. So there's no way this could ever be a usable lot. There's no water there, septic. And the electric power comes right through there, and then it comes right up along here. And it comes up
So
here,
same number of lots.
same number of lots,
Reconfigured.
they're just in the wrong place. This one
Okay.
shouldn't have been on the recorded plan. This lot should have been there, so
That
it's
makes-
just a simple correction.
Did I see a second plan floating around in my stuff? Why do I feel like I saw two originally? Now there's,
So, it should be,
is it the same? I didn't,
should all be the same. It should
okay,
be,
it's only this one. Okay,
should be that one, and those two
Yeah.
are what's on file right now.
right. Okay, so it's a reconfiguration of the lots, and the second thing you're asking for is
The deletion of the,
removing of the age requirement.
correct.
Yeah.
That's-
Max, isn't there a simpler way to amend the site plan to an as-built condition?
When you, what do you mean by as-built condition?
Well, things don't always go in exactly as they are put on paper, and you can amend it to what was actually installed, so long as it meets the intent of the original plans.
Right, so that's a minor subdivision correction, so it can still be approved. It's just a matter of whether the board needs to have a public hearing for that one or not, which as a correction, it's very likely to not really need a public hearing. The question's more on the 55-year-old requirement, because that's the one that's.
Well, as Barbara was doing, I'm trying to do the same. Let's separate the issues and eat
Right.
this elephant one piece at a time.
this would just be
I'd like to
corrected.
I'd like to see us address well, I'll call it the as-built condition, the discrepancy in the site plans outside the planning board, because I don't think we need to. I don't think it's an issue that really concerns us.
All right, I'll confirm that with MMA then.
So we're talking about the correction on the plan for the lots just
Right.
being done.
That's what I'll check with MMA.
Okay,
Basically, Fred, we're saying we're going to take it out of the planning board's purview, and you'll deal directly with Max and Stan to get that corrected. We may have to sign it. I don't know. Max will determine that. But there's no need for a public hearing for something like that.
Right.
So I assume you've talked to our legal advisors about the 55 thing? What do they say?
It's on the plans.
It's on the plan, yeah.
That was just something that was put on back in 2002. It wasn't something we required at the time. It is something that we would have to approve to remove, because it is a major change for the subdivision.
I guess I'm responsible because Lee Smith asked me to do it and I just went ahead and did it. And not thinking that I would ever change it. But
So obviously, nobody who's living on the property is going to object, because a lot of
on
people are
on
in
these
this
lots, we're talking
situation,
about 4 and 6 now.
or the whole property. I'm wondering about, when you make a change to
I gotta get closer to you.
when you make a change to a plan, or where
Right.
people are, or neighbors, whatnot, you inform the neighbors, but who's going to object to changing the age? Who would be objectors to this?
Well, mostly the neighbors objected.
Which neighbors? Outside the property?
Mrs. Keys, the lady
Inside
on,
or outside the property?
they're outside the park, but they objected.
Yeah.
Chucky Campbell, one of my abutters. oh, what's her name? Ann Davis.
There was actually some people in the park who also were in attendance to voice objection, but it was for maintenance issues as well.
Mhm. And there's some problems with younger people, meaning more trouble, right? Is that?
We
is that the
had some
idea?
real characters, and there's about 7 to 9 people that are gone that were in the park. And not gossiping, but
Well,
what it
let's
comes
steer
down
away
to,
from that.
what it comes down to, the age requirement doesn't make a park better or worse. It's bad actors that make it bad,
Yeah.
whatever their age is. And I've tightened up my requirements in the park. I would say there's about 3 or 4 of them that wouldn't qualify today, and they all owe me money. So that tells you where I'm headed with this. I'm really straightening out all these bad actors.
Johnny, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just a question, and I'm certainly no legal scholar, but, so the people who signed up, the understanding was it was a 55 or older park, correct?
Well,
When they started.
actually, no, because I've never advertised that it's a 55-year-old park. I've never advertised at all. But early on, when they started coming in, I told them that this was a park and it was going to be a 55 park or older.
So there's no legal standing that says greater than 55 on any kind of,
On a lease?
On the
or
lease.
something?
There is no lease.
there is, for these people to come in, there's no lease.
No, but the one thing, and I didn't bring it down here because I know at the next meeting, if we ever have a next meeting, we're going to get into this. State law says I can change any of the park rules by giving all my tenants 30-day notice and change the rules. And unfortunately, this 55 issue is really a rule. It shouldn't have been on a land use document. And that's, I'm probably as responsible as Lee Smith, you know.
Yeah.
And here we are, but as I told you, people are dying. Another issue that comes up is people move in, they're not even married, but one is 55, and then they move out. And the law says 80% have to have one tenant that's 55 in the home. So when that 55-year-old person moves out, it's chaos, basically.
So,
I've got a question about the decision that was made in 2020 regarding making the change to the 55 age limit on the park. I sat yesterday and I watched the video of that meeting, the entirety of what was discussed. And there were a lot of problems related to the park that people wanted to voice their feelings about. And it seems like a lot of things have changed. There's dramatically fewer people here for this hearing, for one thing, which makes it look like things are improving. My question is for, I
Are
guess.
they notified for pre-app?
no, not for a pre-application.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's the difference.
Okay, fair enough.
But the pre-application is supposed to be the planning board with the applicants.
My question is, the result of that meeting was a decision that it was going to be a no vote from the planning board until all of these code compliance issues were dealt with, because that was the only lever that we had to move Mr. Best to make these changes. So my question is, I guess I wanted to ask this of Stan, but I guess Max, maybe you can answer this. I don't understand why this is the enforcement measure being used to make these code enforcement issues get resolved, rather than fining the landowner and having a hearing in front of the select board, which I have seen happen with a couple of different properties, Aaron Grindle, Seth Hall. It was handled like that. Why is this issue of the 55 age limit the thing that is being held up over the code compliance issues? It seems to me that there's lots of real code compliance issues here. The code enforcement officer has the authority to notify. The select board has the ability to issue fines. Why is it our role as the planning board to deny this simple change that nobody really has any objection to in order to enforce code compliance issues.
I couldn't agree with you more.
So I'm going to go back to 2020 because I was there and I think I made a number of the comments. My recollection is that there was so much, say, negative support from some of the tenants and the neighbors all about the non-compliance issues, that there was no way that the planning board would support this unless those compliance issues were taken care of. And in my mind, that was the first step. Take care of the compliance issues, then all the residents and all the neighbors that didn't like it before have to come back and say, yeah, we're in favor of it now because Fred's done what he's supposed to do or for whatever reason. But that's, for me, it's all about the commitment made to the tenants that are there in terms of it being 55 and under and how it's perceived in the neighborhood by all the abutters if they agree it's a reasonable change to make. I'll also throw in, just for good measure, last time, Fred, you came before us, your primary reason for making the change was that it would make the subdivision easier to sell. Now it's about some of the complications that come in because of deaths and people moving out or divorces or things. And I think they're all legitimate reasons, but it's just, I'm just noting that we've morphed from one reason to another.
So Jim, if I can jump in,
Yep.
I'm wondering if the board to get back to the focus on the pre-application, and that's just the the code violation update that Stan has provided to everyone for this meeting, that's considered satisfactory to addressing these matters. The second is if, well, I guess if the board has any requests for updates, we can argue about the January 2020 denial, but we're now here 2 years later.
Oh, I agree with.
I was also at that meeting and I don't recall a more vociferous meeting from the town folk who lived there. But I'm wondering, so all of these violations, are they all have been addressed?
If you look on that letter, it says on the bottom updates, and most of them have all been addressed, as with the exception of some of these decks or steps. Some of them were uneven and the people have been leveling them up, getting them level,
Right.
you know.
And at the very end of it, Stan made a 2022 recommendations. One of them is just a copy from the main licensed site evaluator who was involved with the leach field updates. And then just, there were four items that were just not addressed for decks, but from what Brendan was saying earlier, if the feeling is you don't have to be involved for that, and you just want to move ahead with removing that age requirement, then you may do so.
But just as a procedural matter, which I plead against, would we have the residents and the abutters come back
Yes.
to address what we think is already being done?
They'll
Because
be
they should get a,
They are,
They'll be
they're
notified
they'll be
notified
done,
regardless.
okay, so they can come back
Right.
if they want.
if they want, okay?
I do have one question about this update. There was an inspection done of the leach field system.
Right.
Yep.
But we don't have a copy of that or any sort of notes about what's.
That was part of the 2022 recommendation. Just an update on the notes.
Wayne Ludwig.
What do you mean it's an update on the notes?
What?
What do you mean it's an update on the notes?
That was one of the 2022 recommendations, because there is, what you're asking for aren't in our files. So that's what's being requested.
Oh,
if it's
so
going forward.
The town's never seen a report from Wayne Ludwig. We just know that.
They did get the
inspection was done.
report and the recommendations. And Stan authorized me to implement them all, and we did it. And then he came up there, he authorized me to repair what was wrong with the leach field. What was happening basically was there's a box that distributes the water to 4 parts of the leach field.
Yeah.
And all the water was going to 1/4 of it. It was overloading it. So we repaired that, filled the groundhog holes, And I haven't heard from Stan about this for 2 years. So all of a sudden, when he does this, he brings this all up again. Personally, I think this has nothing to do with being 55 either, because the leach field's working fine. They're all working fine. And I would ask all the planning board members to come up and look at them. I have nothing to hide. It's right
Well,
open.
it's the only section where there's an update, but it doesn't actually tell you the results of the inspections. I mean, everything else is pretty clear, but not that part. Isn't that your reading of it?
It sounds like maybe Stan has information about the work that's been done and whether or not these recommendations were implemented based on what Mr. Best just said. Does that sound correct?
It's verbal, so, but the request is just something in writing rather than just the verbal one. So it could just be a simple email from Mr. Ludwig. If you find it satisfactory, just an email from Wayne Ludwig saying he's done these items that were implemented.
I already did them because Stan authorized me to do them and Stan inspected it. And that's what I'm trying to say is the grass is growing great there. The groundhogs are going to be with me forever though.
So
And I will tell you, the only way to get rid of them is to put glass down the hole and then broken glass and then put more sand. And I bought the kind of sand that Stan wanted, septic sand. And compared to where it was, it's a lot better as far as the groundhogs. And I had them over by another building, my water building. They were there for 5 years. And I kept filling in the holes, putting rocks in the holes. Groundhogs have another agenda of their own.
that's fair enough.
That's, they all, yes, that's very true, having my own experience. Hey, I'm gonna suggest a couple of action items. One is that we get Stan to verify that the upgrades were made. I think maybe he just ran out of time with this, but if the upgrades were made by Ludwig, that Ludwig recommended, that should be a pretty straightforward thing to get resolved and get finalized. Second thing I'd like to have our legal eagles weigh in on is Fred's statement earlier that it only takes a 30-day notice to the residents to amend the 55 and over requirement in the park. If it was only on the rules for the park, that's probably true, but since it's part of the approved site plan, that may not be true. I'd like to get a legal opinion on that.
I'm sorry, Jim, can you repeat that?
So
Fred said earlier that,
that's a state rule.
Well, hold on. Can Jim just repeat it?
that he has the right to amend the park rules by giving all of the tenants 30 days notice of the change to the rules. And that would be a simpler way for him to amend the 55 and over requirement. And I don't know that that's in fact applicable here because it's on the site plan that the planning board approved 20 years ago. And I'd like to have a legal opinion on which one governs.
I'll just give you my opinion. I want to get this off the plan. That's why I'm here regardless. You know, most people that have trailer parks, their rules are not on their site plan. So they change them, but they also, the state has certain requirements, certain rules that you can't make applying to people in mobile home parks. And that's in the law too. But it has nothing to do with 55. It has to do with about charging people legal fees. If you take them to court, you can't charge them for that. There's other things that are in the rules. So they have to be sensible when you make rules and sensible when you return. The biggest thing about mobile home parks too is a lot of these people are not very wealthy. It costs between $2,000 and $3,000 to move your home. So to just give somebody 30 days notice and then kick them out is not what I want to run my business by. See what else I want to say about that. The other thing is, well, that's it in the gist. And again, I've come back to a lady's there. She's 60 years old. She dies. You want to turn around and start telling the children, "Oh, you've got to move out." They may not have that $3,000 to move their mobile home. And again, I think a lot of people were unhappy with some of my tenants. I was unhappy with them, but most of them are gone. I'd say 90% of them are gone. And we'll find out at the next, if we ever have another meeting, we'll find out, because I was talking to one of the neighbors that's closest to the park. And I said, well, things have, changed quite a bit. I got rid of quite a few people. He says, yeah, the traffic has really slowed down. So that was his comment. This is Bob Ashley, who lives right on the right before you enter the park. So,
Barbara?
Jim, can I ask a question of you, I guess, Fred? I'm trying to figure out why this might have been put on the site plan in the first place. Was the idea that a 55 and older crowd would be less people per unit and therefore less demands on the septics? I mean, was there some kind of idea about the overall population on the site, or, I mean,
well, I'd been a landlord for a
as
long
opposed to
time
a family?
prior to this, and I just thought dealing with older people would be easier. But some of the characters that I got was terrible.
So there's no other reason that you know of that why this even came up? Even there wasn't a question of some funding or some certain
No, it wasn't.
rules or regs or?
There was nothing, this was put on, I was talking with Lee Smith, I said, I don't think this is gonna be too bad, except maybe ambulances. And he said, well, put this on your plan. And so I did. And again, I regret it, but it was, this was my first time dealing with any kind of subdivision or anything. So I didn't really realize that the world was going to change as much. And I started with the planning board the day after 9/11, and the world has just been going in a different direction ever since then. So that's about the best way to sum it up.
So I don't have a problem in theory of changing a site plan or changing a accepted plan that was submitted to the board 20 years ago on something like this. It's not that major. It's not getting bigger. It's not getting smaller. Same infrastructure. I don't know. I guess I don't understand what the big deal is.
As I say, back in 2020, the vote was, there was concerns about all the violations that were currently going on at the park.
Right.
And so the concern was it was going to get worse. And so that's why these items were requested to be, these violations from 2019 were requested to be addressed. And
And
you
what
do
about
have the updates.
And what about the police chief? He was here at that meeting too. Is he ever get any feedback of recent?
I asked the emergency services as well about this, and they said that it has noticeably gotten a lot better compared to what it was back in 2019 or 2020. So that was again the point of the pre-application. If anyone has any concerns,
Because there are other
Or-
rules and, other ways of managing bad behavior besides, this kind of little, the society's got other ways of managing these kind of problems. And it is, seemed kind of weird to lock somebody into, it just seems arbitrary. In fact, I can't even imagine going to a landlord and having to tell them how old I am. That seems rude.
I don't know, if Massachusetts, you can't ask that question.
I would think you couldn't, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like that in Maine, but that was another part of the discussion in the 2020 meeting was that the rule to have residents of 55 and older is completely unenforceable. You can't, if you're not going to ask the question up front, people aren't obligated to tell you the truth. Like, how would you ever possibly manage that?
Right.
So
that's a civil lawsuit that would potentially be on Fred's hands then, if someone was to look.
that's not our problem as the planning board.
I know,
Right.
but that's.
I'm gonna get us back on track. I'll
Yep.
try.
So
So we're gonna ask legal, who makes the call on the over 55 part of the park rules? Is it Fred as part of the trailer park rules, or is it the planning board because it's on the approved site plan? Let's just get a legal opinion, and maybe it gives everybody a good out. We don't know until we ask and get the answer. The other thing I wanted to add is, and actually I think we already talked about it, was the as-built plan. Whether or not there's an easier way to amend the plan. I don't think we have any problem with doing it. It's just what's the most expeditious way to get that done so the plan that's on record matches what's actually been built. Anyone, anything
Have you
else?
had many amended plans come in here?
We've had a couple in my time that we've been here. We've had a couple that have come in.
Okay, who decides on the language that goes on the amended plan? You just look at it and say, we agree, and, because that seems to be, when I talked to Max, he wants you guys to be happy with the language that's put on there. When I came before, we had language that we had agreed on, Max, and it was there with the places to sign, and that's as far as it ever got, but
So what would happen is during the preliminary plan, or tonight, if people were gonna say anything, they would make suggestions now or at the preliminary meeting to say, this is what the language should say on the plan. And then we would get the final plan, which would have that amended language, and the board would then sign it that night.
I mean, omitting something should be pretty straightforward. I don't see how this is so complicated. Because if we take a new plan and take it to the registry, where it says 55, it'll be all whited out. So it'll be removed. So that'll be the end of it. But it'll be
So-
noted on that plan that it was removed, you know.
Fred, when I talk about the revising the plan, it has nothing to do with 55. It's all about lot 30.
Well, no, we're talking about all the revisions right now, are we not?
I'm breaking it up into separate pieces. We've got changing the plan to to replace what has been recorded with what should have been recorded, which is around the routing of the electrical and lot 30. That one I'd like to either do outside the planning board, or if it does need to come to us, that's straightforward. Just write the reason for it in the amendment, in the revision column, that it should have been this one. The wrong one was recorded. Something simple to that effect, and we can at least get that element taken care of for Fred. And then separately, we're going to talk to the lawyers about the over 55.
So I can confirm all the non-age requirement items. Again, for the pre-application, the big question is, with the letter you have from Stan on the code violation updates, or just in your opinion, do you see this as a reason, back in 2020, violations were the main reason for why it was prevented from going forward? I will double check with the attorneys, although I think I answered that question earlier, but on the age requirement, is there a barrier now for it to go forward if the attorneys can agree that it does have to go to the planning board? Because again, the code violations for the reason the board denied this back in 2020. We now have an updated letter from Stan Waltz on where those violations are at. You think it is?
Max, I would have a slightly different view of history, as we all do, and that's that the code violations were brought to us by the residents and the abutters. They're the ones that objected to it. And until we put it back in front of them, I don't think we have a basis for a decision. We need to hear from the folks that originally complained about these before we would consider making a revision to the over 55.
But that would be part of the preliminary application then.
An application.
Right, the pre-application with where we're at right now
Yep.
is if the board has any other notes for Fred to make the amendment. That makes sense.
I would say no. I would say no. I don't believe we have any. I think we spelled things out pretty clearly.
You still want to hear from the abutters if this does come back.
Absolutely. They're the ones that brought all these issues up in the first place. They deserve a second go around.
I would strongly agree with that, because like I said, there was a lot of emotion from those people, and they should have the ability to come here and 2 years later, say, give their perspective on it.
Okay.
And another thing
Sure.
about the language, the Maine Municipal Association, they have a nice little handout. And it always says the importance of definitions and give terms a narrow, specific meaning, distinguish from common usage, eliminate ambiguity, and thus potential conflict. So to me, if you say 55 or older, that's pretty specific, right? It doesn't mean 29 or 32. I mean, I don't know if I'm barking up the wrong tree here, but the language was specific. And again, the Maine Municipal Association, to me, you're talking about legal interpretation. There were two pretty sharp legal people who were given this seminar. Well, you know that.
Yes.
So I don't know if it would be worthwhile to run some of these questions by them.
I don't see which question, so whether we can.
The
we can change
55,
the
okay, this is
55?
my take on it. You have your take and that's fine. Your take. But I think if you're gonna go into a park with the understanding that it's 55 or older, then that's what you sign in and buy into. That should be what it is.
Right.
And again, people say, well, it's no big deal. Well, I think it is. People who are 55, 60, maybe they don't want a 20-year-old, kid or whatever. I mean, that's my feeling.
Right.
I'm not making any value judgment. I'm just saying I'm old fashioned like that. If you say something, you should stick by it. And somebody on the planning board signed off on that, correct?
The
Well, the whole planning board
approved
did.
it back in
So, I mean,
So part of the issue on that is that when we're talking about the amendments, we don't really have too much in the ordinance that does restrict saying this has to always stay as an age requirement facility. This was something that was just put on the plans back then. So
And he's asking to change it.
right. Well, I'm
And
just
that's-
saying, I don't think that's our purview to determine legal issues, is it? I'm certainly not a lawyer. So I don't know if that holds. So
Johnny, that's why I've asked that
Yeah, no, I
Max go
agree,
to
I agree.
lawyers
Get a
and
legal-
get a reading for us, okay?
Okay, that's cool.
Fred, anything left to say?
Again, I'm just requesting to remove it. The people that are in the park are there. They're not complaining to me about anything. It's mostly people that live down the road. They thought things were gonna be older people there. They had an idea in their head. The other thing is, this is a mobile home park, and if somebody says, I don't want to live here anymore, I'm not holding them there to live. In the town, we had a bunch of people who moved in with campers. The town gave them the permits to move in. 4 years later, they told them they had to move out. They moved out, most of them, and I had to evict one guy, and it took the state of Maine to get behind Stan Walsh to give me enough ammo to go to court where a judge would throw him out. That's where I ended up with this situation. That was one of the things on there. So,
Well, I suggested that you submit the formal application through Max. We'll have a public hearing. We'll let all the abutters and residents voice their opinions like they did 2.5 years ago and see where we stand.
But I'll get the legal opinion as as the board was requesting, correct, Jim?
Yes, please. Yep.
I would suggest, we were thinking coming next month to this. I'd say let's give Max an extra month to get the MMA to give him some answers here. I think that's what you're looking for.
November.
I'm not going anywhere. And I will tell you, I am not going to own this park, I hope, in 5 or 6 years. I'm 71 years old. I'm looking to do less work in my life. So that's going to happen, or I'm going to drop dead, one or the other. I won't be here. It doesn't matter. The other thing is, I was a realtor for 18 years. And both of these things need to get just changed. So future owners will not have issues with what's going on paper. And I think about this bread store down on Route 1. They got a permit to build their place. They closed the store and they're still putting bread in and out of there every day. So, but they didn't put that on their plan that they were gonna have probably, I don't know for sure, but they didn't put on their plan it was gonna be a store, and now they closed the store, you know. But,
Yeah, things
things have
change.
to have some flexibility. The town has zoning, all these locations of different things. Only mobile home parks can be in certain places. There's nothing, I don't believe, in the zoning that says my park has to be 55. You know, whereas all the other ones aren't 55. So you're making it easier for other people to rent their homes than me. So as time goes forward, you know. I'm not trying too hard to run them, but I'm thinking in terms of maybe somebody else running this park and owning it. So I just want to give them a clean slate and on equal ground with all the other parks. So that's where I'm at.
What percentage of tenants have been there for more than 20 years?
Pardon?
What percentage of your tenants have been there for more than 20 years?
All right, let's see. 2002, I started, took 6 years, 2008, maybe 2009 or 2010. Gary Thibodeau moved in. He was my first tenant. He's still there, and he has his little grandson living with him.
Okay, well,
So he's over 55, but he's got a young kid there. So
so would you say more than 50% of the lots have been there for more than 25 years? 20 years.
well, let's see, 2008,
Your first
Well,
tenant was an 8, right?
14 years. We're talking 14
14
years.
years.
Nobody's been there more than 14 years. Park's only been open for 14 years.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, I think we have enough,
Okay.
everybody has enough information to move forward, right?
Okay, so you
I'll get that information then.
Fred, let you coordinate with Max on when you want to submit formally, and we'll see what he hears from the MMA.
And then
Sounds good.
clarify the septic thing, the note here, right?
Yep, I do have that on notes that Stan will write a verification of the upgrade was done.
Okay, I got a question. So MMA comes back and says, I'm within my rights to try to change this. Do we have to come back, have another prelim meeting like this one, and then another full meeting with all the neighbors, or?
If
can we just-
MMA comes back and says you're within your rights to change it, you no longer have to deal with the planning board.
Okay, and that's the other thing is the state law, if they say I can change it. But again, I would like to still get it omitted from the plan, just so this is clear.
Fred, we understand that. We
Yes,
understand
You know,
that.
what you were talking about, everything being clear. I
Have
think
to
there's,
be in front of us to get it off, to get the.
That's
proper plan?
what I'll confirm with them.
Okay.
okay, and that would be better for everybody, future owners. And I guess the planning board will learn something too out of all of this. When people submit plans, they don't just leave here and go out in the world. These things are on record for everybody for forever, I guess, you know, and just like descriptions and deeds, you know what I mean? That's how the system works, and that's what makes it work, you know. So. Okay,
Thank you.
I think I'm done then here, right?
Okay,
All set?
thanks.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm gonna just sit in here like this.
Next topic on the agenda is the change of use to the woodworking shop at 17 Friendship Road. Who's going to be presenting that?
Yeah, here.
Hello, my name is Kerry Nouse. I'm with CDK Cabinet Makers. I'm located in Union now. I've been in business since 2000.
Gary, could you speak up just a little bit,
I
please?
have a
Yeah,
microphone.
let me,
Um,
well, there's supposed to be a mic right up there.
I
but
see.
I'll just do this. Oh,
Sorry.
no. Usually this is easier.
Okay.
We'll do that for Q&A.
I've been building and designing fine furniture and cabinetry since then. I apprenticed out of high school with a furniture maker and just transitioned into home building and then into cabinet making and started my shop in 2000. I've been in Union since 2009 and currently I'm in the Thompson Community Center. I don't know if you're familiar with that building. There's some things going on a little bit with the town and how that's being, so I'm trying to find a new location. A good friend of mine purchased the property that I'm looking at trying to move into from Sumner Richards. And she originally was going to put something in down, I believe it was like a bone broth bar or something like that. And that kind of went by the wayside. And then she kind of offered it up to me. It's a pretty neat space. I went in, I believe it was January, I hired a crew. We demoed the inside of the building because I wanted to get to the brick and the heavy timber ceiling. And that's when she received a letter from Stan Waltz, and she kind of didn't let me know until a few months later, but that woodworking isn't permitted there or is questionable. So I'm here. I would love to move the shop in downtown. I'm a one-person shop. I do not do mass production cabinetry. It's, we average maybe 5 to 7 kitchens a year with furniture in between. This year, I'm going to put my dad in the shop. He's 77, and he just kind of wants to sweep the floor or do something like that. But yeah, I don't have walk-in traffic. All of my stuff is by commission, and I work with a pretty select group of clienteles. So I'm not going to have people coming in and out of the shop, and it's actually my insurance is stated as such. I come in the morning, door's locked. It's everything's by appointment. Every once in a blue moon, I will get a customer that wants to come up and view, a kitchen or a sample part. But in the last 2 years, I think maybe I've had 3 customers actually show up. So we do everything, I just make samples, ship them out, approve them. A lot of my work is out of state. I do have quite a bit on the coast and the islands, but I just want to run a cool space and operate my shop. As far as delivery trucks, what I have sorted out is I've been dealing with the same vendor since I started here, and they're out of Sanford. So I'm not a big proponent of, I don't shop around. I stick with one guy, but I spoke to Store Lumber, and we're working on a deal where they'll supply my sheet goods, my plywoods for me. I don't want to just, up and leave the supplier I've been using for over a decade, but I'll get my hardwoods from them, and they come up with a big straight truck, which is about, I want to say maybe 26 feet long. So instead of delivering straight to the shop on Friendship, we've set up, I'll go meet them with my trailer, maybe at Irving's, the side parking lot. I don't want to congest downtown at all. And sometimes, I can get 1,000 board feet of material, which could take, 30, 35 minutes to unload. So this way that stays free and clear. And all my sheet goods I will store in the building as well, but I can just shoot over to the stores, put them in the truck or trailer, get them when I need them. As far as I know, noise is a hot topic. What I can say about that is the wall, like there's a shared common wall with Narrows Tavern, and there's a pass through that was kind of boarded over, I think when Jeff took over, and then, and I'm basing this off of what like Sumner has told me and what Jeff has told me. At one point, I guess the 5 and 10 occupied all of that. But so my idea was, I consulted a close friend of mine. Their wife is, excuse me, an architect, and we figured out a way to make like a better soundproof wall. So basically, all along that adjoining wall is going to be a 2x6 framed wall with 5/8 inch drywall on either side. And on the inside of mine, it's called a Z-clip. So instead of putting drywall straight to the wood, because that's just going to transfer sound, this Z-clip goes on, and it creates an airspace. And inside each stud cavity is, I'm going to use like rock wool. There's a sound deadening insulation. It's pretty substantial. And I've also converted a lot of my cutter heads, like when you hear a planer run, a lot of people don't realize this, but that's a straight knife, 3 knives on the head, and that's actually air trapped in between each rotation. That's like loud, obnoxious noise. Well, if you use a helical head, so there's like 94 cutters, it's constant contact to the wood. I can almost take my earplugs off when I'm running through the planer. You know, if I was going to do it for 6 hours straight, you want hearing protection, but the sound level has gone way down.
What about the ceiling? Isn't there a, did you take the tin ceiling down?
There wasn't a tin ceiling there. It was the tin ceiling's upstairs. Maybe there was a tin ceiling one time, but someone put there was plaster and lath, and then like some really old, like 3/4 inch fir.
So are you going to soundproof the ceiling?
No, the tenant upstairs, she's the owner. She's been in my shop numerous times, and she's fine because we want to leave that look, you know, the heavy timber open. And there's talks of me potentially buying the building anyway, and then I would just live upstairs. So while I'm working, no one's upstairs. The other concern I know was my spray booth. I do have a commercial spray booth. Don't think one that fits a car, but it's 8 by 12. And my thoughts or plans were, there's a garage basement to this building. And what I'd like to do is open up the floor on the storefront side, drop a nice set of steps, and turn that garage basement into just a contained spray unit where I can go down, spray all my sheet goods or whatever, come upstairs, shut the door, and go to work, and that stays down there. The exhaust fan would come out and actually point straight down to the ground and only be maybe 2 feet off the ground at that level because of the way the slope is. I do spray solvents. So here's, I know another concern. I've looked into waterborne products. I've sprayed plenty. I'm old fashioned. So if I'm being hired to build someone's, costly kitchen, the water-based stuff doesn't pass what's called the pencil test yet. So it's just not there. I'm not going to put my name on something that I can't get behind totally. Yep.
Jerry, so your shop, your proposed shop, it's, if you were at the Narrows looking straight out, is it to the left?
It's the end unit.
Or that's the one all the way to the end?
Still 509.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And you is that little, you see that very steep road?
Well, that's good you brought that up. That's not actually a road. And that's an issue that I want to address otherwise, because
Say that's not
people,
a road, but it's. I mean,
people
kind of
use that as a road. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had so many people fly down through there. I mean, 25
Right.
miles an hour, and it's kind of crazy. But I'd like to stop that, because what they're doing is they're tearing up that area and they're creating these like sinkholes
It's a
for the
huge
drain
sinkhole
pipes.
there.
So, and that's, I've talked to Stan, it falls under this weird category. That's like DOT. So it's not really the town's issue, but yeah, so I'd like to eliminate, I mean, keep it as a walkway for people,
Right,
but just
right.
let's not have cars running up and down there.
Yeah, that little sinkhole has a little orange flag there, because I jog by there about 3 times a week.
Yeah, they
Someone
changed.
hits that, or steps in it.
Yeah, well, that sinkhole, there was another one down further. That got filled up. There was someone trying to, this is maybe 11 or 11:30 at night. They were trying to drag a bass boat up through there with their pickup truck at speed, and then they got stuck. So, yeah, that's, but that's where I'm at. I have no desire to turn this into some mass production facility. That's not the way I operate. I do a lot of handwork, and I would just like, ideally I'd like to purchase the building and live upstairs. It's just me. So, it'd be kind of a cool place. The upstairs has beautiful tin ceilings. I spoke with Jeff at Narrows. I was concerned about noise issues. He was great. He wasn't too worried about it. I'm not going to be operating my equipment at like 11 o'clock at night. I'll run normal business hours and call it good. As far as lighting, I think people were concerned about maybe bright lights. I run all LED shop lights in there. Everything's back a bit. I have a commercial dust collection system. It's a big cyclone unit. I need at least 10-foot ceiling height just to get it in there. It's designed to operate. I can turn every piece of equipment on at once, and it's designed to evacuate. 87 to 88% of the material.
So you're here because it used to be a retail shop and a restaurant shop, and now it's going to be a woodworking shop, a cabinet making shop. Yep. And it's zoned a business, commercial
Downtown.
downtown. Yeah. So that's, all that seems pretty straightforward. In my mind, what I'm wondering is, so once we have a shop like yours come in, which does have, smelly stuff happening once in a while. If the next guy, suppose someone wants to come in after you, and we have this precedent of having that kind of level of manufacturing and products being emitted out beyond the building edge, you know what I mean? So I guess with the next business that comes in, that so I totally can imagine that you manage it just fine. So I'm just wondering about the next guy and what we're setting ourselves up for.
Well, I have a question, if I can throw that in there. So if you spent any considerable time on Friendship Street, specifically right there on that block, at any point in time, the laundromat is just dumping exhaust out, which, if you want to get technical, dryer sheets, they contain chemicals. It's not healthy. And actually, the part that concerns me the most is just the cigarette smoke out in public. So you had people, they're going to be, exposed to secondhand smoke, which is far greater than the little bit that I'm going to be, and it's going straight into the ground. I'm looking into, one thing to be clear is when I'm spraying, like my filters get changed the first of every month. I do a maintenance the first of every month. Machines get cleaned, shop gets cleaned. Nothing's getting out past the filters as far as like particulate matter. You'll get some odor, but it's really not that bad. I've had a few people walk by where my shop is located now, and this really kind of surprises me. My booth exits through a window, and people will park their car right there while my booth is on, which I find to be interesting. I mean, if I get out of my car and I hear a spray booth fan right in my ear, I might move. But I've asked people, and they just said no. They hear the fan motor, but
Yeah, so like I said, I totally get that you really like to run a clean shop, which is great. And I don't have a problem with basically the whole project, but what I'm asking Max is what are we setting ourselves up for in the future if this were to change hands for that type of business and someone, you know what I mean? What do we have for, what does Stan have to work?
So noise, for example, there's still the noise standards, just because.
Max, Barbara, I don't think anybody that's not there can hear you. Sorry.
All right, sorry, I forgot. I'll speak up. So Barbara's question was about if Carrie's no longer the owner there anymore and there's just someone else who's doing a very similar use moving in instead, what safety net does the town have? So first, there's the noise standards, just because the board may say tonight, well, Carrie's gonna follow that, so we believe he's gonna follow the noise standards. If he's violating those noise standards, and if he's running his equipment in the middle of the night, or if Carrie's not there in a year and someone else moves in instead and they're running their equipment at midnight, then they're still violating the noise ordinance. And if someone wants, they can call the police
Yep.
to enforce that matter.
okay, so I have a question. The noise ordinance. My friend that owns the building, she's been sending videos constantly. So just last night, I believe it was 10 o'clock at night, there's a gentleman outside with his motorcycle, music cranked. I mean, I thought they were in her building. And she's like, okay, now it's after 10 o'clock at night. And I'm not against, like, I don't want to paint a picture.
Yeah,
You ride a motorcycle, that's great. But, and the other part is, let's actually look at Friendship Street, that block right there, because I have a lot of friends that are law enforcement in other counties. And do you know that other like Knox County, for instance, the deputies, that's called Talladega, because everyone knows it's a drag strip, like it's obnoxious there. So, and that's all hours of the day and night consistently. I mean, she sent video after video, and she actually wanted to reach out and purchase one of those signs that that tells you how fast you're going, and she was going to put it there out of her own pocket, just because it's dangerous. People don't want to cross the street, and there's children. So, if you spend, just even a week, hang out there just split the time. Yeah, it's eye opening. So
I live there. It's worse than you're describing.
yeah, it's crazy.
Well, we can't solve that problem tonight, but
No, but what I'm addressing is like the noise that I would generate isn't anywhere near what's already taking place and continuing to take place. So,
Okay, but regardless of that, Carrie, if the noise is above what the ordinance calls for and somebody files a complaint, you'll have to comply. I understand it's already noisy, but that doesn't get you a get out of jail free card.
no, but I sent you a video, like
Yes.
I went in my shop, I turned on the three loudest pieces of equipment, the dust collector, the table saw, and the planer.
I have the video.
And I walked outside. I was like, okay, I'm in a brick building. That's 17's a brick building. And I stood out in front of a window because I'm like, all right, that's going to emit sound. You don't really hear it. You don't hear the stuff running. So, when you walk into, it has an entryway, you'll hear a hum. So none of the equipment makes like high pitch sounds. It's a machinery hum. It's really not that bad. Like personally, if my equipment was obnoxious, I wouldn't want to sit there and listen to it for 10 hours a day. That's just me.
Where's your dust collection?
Dust collection is a big cyclone. I don't know if you're familiar with those. That runs high. That's kind of why I like the high ceilings in that place, because I keep my duct work. When I relocate, if I relocate to there, I submit a floor layout to the company. It's Oneida Dust Collection, and they actually engineer the ductwork again all over, because it works off of static pressure, not vacuum. And I get that back. I set the dust collection up just the way they request it. And yeah, because it goes from like a 12-inch inlet down to like an 8 and then 6. And then I have blast gates at each machine, which that's what you open and close. It's pretty efficient. And I've had that since 2001. No issues. It gets serviced. And as far,
Carrie, what are your plans for the storefront?
what are my plans for the storefront?
Yeah, what will it look like? What will the appearance be from the street?
Oh, well, I'd like to paint the storefront. We sampled like a darker gray, because I was looking at the way Narrows did everything in black. And I just kind of wanted to keep things so it looked presentable, and it kind of jived with that a little bit.
Windows clear, people can look and see what's going on. You go
They
into
can,
screen
yeah,
it.
I'll leave it clear, but the only thing I want to change is the door. So the door opening was already set up for like these double doors, which are in the basement. And I actually thought about using those because they're kind of interesting, but it doesn't really work for weather sealing. I'm making a 4-foot by 8-foot door, so I can just get material and components in and out of there a little bit easier, because that's where I have to load and unload. I do have a trailer, but I'll keep the trailer at my residence and just bring it in when I need to make a delivery. And I don't know, try and keep a real minimal impact or footprint.
Jerry, just, do you store any concerns about, do you store solvents and flammable product in the shop?
Oh, absolutely. And I have specific cabinetry for that. They're metal cabinets. Everything gets grounded. So like all the thinners, you run a ground strap to a little like alligator clip, sits on every handle. Yep.
So that's good.
Yeah.
Is this building sprinkled?
No. So here's my understanding. It's a masonry building. Sprinklers can be optional. If it had wood framing inside to support the floor system, then that would come into play. My insurance obviously would love it. I mean, where I'm at right now, it has a brand new sprinkler system in, but no. The other change that we're looking at doing is just upgrading the heat system. So it has 2 Modine heaters that hang. They blow air, and I don't need any more dust blowing in the air in the shop. So all seasons heating. They're in Warren. I think they were from Waldeboro though originally. They're going to come in, and we're going to run just they're brand new versions of like cast iron radiators. They're rugged, they can take a beating. You know, it's probably the safest form of heat, I think. You know, it's all hot water, but yeah.
Am I correct in understanding that there's an issue with the woodworking use of this building being in the downtown business zone?
No. So that was a miscommunication. Under section 6.74, matrix and land use ordinance.
Yeah.
Specifically page 6-11, it is an allowed use with planning board.
Okay.
Ordinance didn't allow artist studios or
Yeah.
this kind of thing. I mean, it was really pretty, very restricted. I didn't have any other questions. I do sort of have questions about the next person, even in terms of deliveries and trucks and, if we're setting a precedent for this kind of thing. Village is the village.
You can set the condition to be more associated so that the use and everything is associated with carry and CDK.
With his specific business only? We can do that?
I feel we had this discussion with Allison Larkin and Gorgeous Cheeses when they wanted to do the farmers market. This very same question
Oh, that's
came up.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. During their. Yeah. Anybody else have a concern about that? I mean, it seems, it could be a type of business that a lot of activity, a lot of unloading and, is that the kind of thing that would occur in the village? Yeah, again, I think what you're doing is fine, but the next thing.
Well, there's already a lot of unloading and loading right on Friendship Street with straight trucks now that actually
I know,
stopped it.
So do we want to add to it?
Right.
I mean, even when people are fixing their buildings, it gets hectic down there, so.
How frequently are you getting deliveries of hardwood and sheet goods?
Every Thursday. So as far as the hardwood goes, that won't even take place there. I mean, I'll go out and get it. The plywood, actually going through store, that eliminates all of that for me now. So I can just go over there 5 days a week, 6 days a week. And I've talked to,
That's not for it.
yeah, it's next door, and I'd rather
You
shop
can
local.
park in back. We talked about the garage
Well,
underneath. Is
you
that
know-
where you're gonna go with your truck and then?
No, that's a really, I'm not quite sure what's going on with the whole parking lot deal. So when my friend purchased the property from Sumner, he was under the assumption that there's room for one parking space behind that building. It comes out 9 feet this way. But I've been told a few different things where, well, now that parking lot is completely, that's a private parking lot. It was Ted Wooster's, I believe. And someone said that Ted owned that little alleyway up there. Well, on the map now, it's showing that 17 has maybe 80% of that little alleyway on an angle. And I don't want to park back there. I think whatever happens with the sale, or, if it stays a parking lot, that's great. That's open to the public. Sure, that'd be nice to park my truck there. But yeah, I would just take a spot normally. I do know, if you're familiar, there's a deck on the side, and I think when someone put that in, that was used just, some rough cut softwood material. There's just a lot of stuff that's rotten to it. So he used to park, at least he said, he used to park his car in there beforehand. The sidewalk's cut out for it. You can go in and out. I have no intentions of parking my truck there, but if it's possible to park out back, I will.
Like your sheet goods and all that's going on. Most of it's gonna be going into the main floor off the
Yeah.
main street.
Yep.
So that's where all your materials are coming in and out generally.
Yep, that's about the only place. I looked at, okay, what can we do to modify? Realistically, just the way the land is set up, it just doesn't make any sense to bring it in anywhere else.
Right.
are you gonna get the furniture from upstairs where you're creating it down to the paint booth?
Oh, so I'm gonna cut a hole in the floor and actually drop a set of stairs, like wide steps. And, I'll have a rail around it, but I'll actually have it on a trap door. So like I can come upstairs, shut the door, the spray room stays just clean and quiet itself down there.
Harry, do you have any employees or are you a one-man shop?
I'm a one-man shop.
Your dad.
I said my father, he just turned 77 and I might put him to work doing something, but he's going to do like an hour a day, come in.
It's not the paper.
Yeah, no.
That's fine. That's.
Yep.
I didn't realize that was the context of that comment earlier on.
Yeah, Mark has a question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, quickly, the solvents and other stuff that you have, I'm assuming you have a cabinet you're gonna be storing that stuff in?
Oh, yeah. So
other than being
all the cabinets are, you have to, actually, you're supposed to buy them. They're metal, they're flammable resistant cabinets. Off the top of my head, I don't know what the extended burn period is. It's at least an hour. I want to say maybe 2. They're heavy cabinets, and everything stays in there. So it's not like, the only thing that I might not store in there is like a latex paint. But
the other question I got is kind of a comment. I'm concerned about, I know there was a letter from Chief Smelter from the fire department. I am concerned about the mixed use and it being residential on the second floor.
Yep.
Is there any changes as far as at least the alarm system? I know we talked about sprinkler system and that's not going to be added. Is there any changes or anticipations as far as an alarm system install? Is it going to be monitored or not monitored?
not to my knowledge, no, we didn't really discuss that. There's already more than ample power coming into the building because I think Sumner had a store in there at one time with big case coolers. And so I talked to All Seasons and all I'd like to do is the panel boxes are down in the basement. I'd rather not, if something was emergent, I'd rather not have to run through the shop, run down the stairs, run into the basement. So we're just going to transfer and put the panel box upstairs with like an emergency kill. And that way, if something goes on, I can hit that and shut it down instead of, it might only be 20 seconds to get downstairs to do that, but 20 seconds, that's a long time.
Yeah, I guess the concern I have with the fire side is with wood, as you know, you're increasing the fire load inside the building. And I'm just concerned with residents on the upper floors of not just that building, but the adjacent buildings as well, of making sure that they're protected, that's all. So with an alarm system, at least there's some type of warning that can take place to help. The other problem is that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the exit at the rear of the building in the basement area where you're gonna have the spray equipment, that's also where the staircase is for the fire escape. So
The fire escape comes outside the building, down behind that door. That's right on the corner.
there's the main entrance, but
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, there is a fire escape in the rear of the building as well.
Correct. Yep.
So that, again, I just want to make sure that we're not creating a fire hazard or escape hazard for the people that are going to be living there.
But this would all be the CEO's jurisdiction to verify that all those kind of codes are met.
Yep.
I mean, they're good points to bring up, but it's not completely under our.
No, and that's why I said it's more of comments of
Right.
safety and what we're dealing with.
Right.
So,
And certainly if basically if there's a mortgage, you have smoke detectors and all that kind of stuff set up throughout the building anyway. But, yeah. Anything else, Jim?
Jim, did you have any other thoughts?
Pardon me? It's having trouble hearing.
Did you have any other thoughts, Jim?
No, well, actually, I do have one. And it has to do with the fire concern. Would be worthwhile getting state fire marshal to take a look when everything is all said and done. I mean, approving the final installation once it's done, assuming everything goes forward. I know that they did that up at Topsail and they found a few issues, which is why Topsail came back to us for some changes a few years ago. It could just be a good safeguard for everyone's benefit to have them take a look, or Chief Smeltzer, one or the other.
Yeah,
When
Jim,
all,
if I-
again, when all is completed, to make sure that there are no safety issues from a fire standpoint.
Paul's letter already says that he'll be
that he would
making
like,
a site visit
that was,
to identify hazards, so I don't think we need to add it to our info.
well, yeah.
Okay.
Jim, what Barbara was pointing at was Chief Smeltzer's letter saying that he would appreciate a site visit as well with this application. So that would be more of a condition that the planning board would be making, that Chief Smeltzer or State Fire Marshal, whoever you're, probably more Chief Smeltzer would be visiting the site.
I think we're talking about two different things. One would be code with the state fire marshal's office. The other would be, site visit and what called a pre-fire plan for the local fire department. So
I can't tell from here. Is there anyone else in the audience or online that has any comments or questions?
Someone named Tabitha on Zoom, but I don't know what they're here for. They're mute.
Oh, no one speaking up. We'll go forward then.
So
Okay, Carrie, thank you very much for all of that. Any other further comments from the board? And if not, does somebody want to make a motion?
So Jim, if it's all right for me to quickly jump in here. And I asked Carrie if it would be all right with us doing this. I mentioned a few months ago how we need to get back into sort of the MMA procedure of going through the application. Do you recall those conversations back in
Yep.
like May and June? So I feel with tonight, with a bit of a straightforward application like this, if this would be appropriate to use Carrie as sort of the example in this case, assuming if you're still all right with that. I don't know if the board has any opinions on that.
There's a form that we're gonna go through?
No, it would just be going through the standards and just saying, doing a motion on each of those essentially.
All of
I know,
them, all of them?
I know.
So we already know are not applicable?
Those would just be, we accept those as waivers, not applicable.
Okay, started reviewing.
Well, if Jim's fine with it, I would just do a checklist, and it's the guidance checklist that I gave everyone quite some time ago. And it was just the applicable waiver, the decision, and then the findings by board. The checklists were sent out like a year ago, and again, it's just fallen by the wayside. So,
So you just want to read it?
well, yeah, it would just be the formal steps that the
Okay.
MMA would like us to do. Jim, is it all right to do that tonight?
Let's see how it goes. You're going to start with what, Article 3511?
Well, first, just on a more complete item, this is just a formal check if there are any planning board members who have a conflict of interest. Usually, people are very good about stating that beforehand. I don't see any. Next is if there is standing for the application. This is to verify that there is deed, a lease, title of interest to show that the applicant before you does have the standing to apply for tonight. I believe everyone did get a copy of the deed and the lease agreement. If I'm correct.
Yep.
So this would just be a quick formal vote. If the board believes that Gary does have standing for tonight.
Yep.
There a motion?
Do a motion on each thing?
I told you, this is a long thing MMA does. Well,
I make a
can-
motion that we
I'll-
agree that a lease has been submitted between the landlord and Kerry.
All right. So now it will be, oh,
Can we do groups of things and then a motion?
this is something where we'll have to toy with a bit more, and MMA would have to confirm if that's acceptable a bit later. So there was a motion for Barbara to accept that the applicant has standing. Is there a second? Jeff seconds. All those in favor? Jim, are you in favor?
Yes,
All right, so it's unanimous. And now we'll go through the items.
Can you warn me how many there are?
You don't want me to tell you.
It's 2 pages of these, aren't they? Okay.
It's about 50. So what I believe can be done is we can accept the accepted by town, submitted on town forms, because those were done beforehand. Actually, I think for argument's sake, section 3 point, it would just be section 3.5.1 and then 3.5.2, and then we'd go through each of the standards individually. So
Does anyone here have a copy of this thing?
of the checklist,
You have one?
yeah, Mark was in,
Like
Mark was in the office, if you wanted to
See that?
if you want to take a look at that.
Copy machine in this space.
So first would be if board members believe standards of section 3.5.1 are satisfied. This is, if the forms were submitted, the applicant has provided their information, the property's location and details have been provided. There is verification of ownership. These have been paid. There is an estimated cost of construction for the project. There's a description of the project. There's an anticipated start and completion dates. All other local, state, and federal permits were acquired. Site maps were provided to address various issues. Estimated water and sewage were provided. Evidence of the site, evidence that the site can connect to sewer. An HHE 200 form is provided if it's on septic. Vehicular, pedestrian, and traffic was provided, and any other information. This should be part of the first page of the standards and the documents that you were all provided. It's right after the lease. Yep. Yep. So this is going through, yep, this is, these are all the items for 3.5.1,
Okay.
which carries over to page 2. Board members believe standards are addressed and completed for section 3.5.1.
That the material was submitted to comply with the 3.5.1 items.
Is there a second? Jeff, second. Is there any discussion? Johnny, do you have a question?
Well, I recall the seminar I went to from Maine.
Yep.
and this one, they were kind of big on this. They said that should be part of, just for, if anything, legal records. So
Yep.
they kind of.
And that's why,
We should have been doing it, I guess, according, you know.
and that's why we're asking
No, I hear
to get
you.
back into this method.
I actually wrote a note about that to tell you. I don't know where it is now. They were big on.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Jim, I see your hand is up. Is that in favor?
That's in favor.
All right. Okay. Now, 3.5.2. This is for the site, this is primarily for the site map, but this is the title block, names of engineers and professionals provided, planning board approval block, revision block, conditions of approval block, building and structure drawings, estimated peak hour of traffic and average daily traffic, site map prepared by professional engineer or architect, stormwater and erosion plans, technical and financial capacity, contour lines on the map, fire protection, provisions addressed. These this one, the stormwater and erosion plans and site map prepared by professional engineers or architects are requested waivers because this is just a change of use for a building.
So instead of writing not applicable, we go, yes, waiver. Received a what, what do we
Yes.
write there? Yes.
I would say wait, it would be written waiver, yes.
All right, so some of the stuff is waiver, some of it isn't.
So the motion was,
Described here.
Mhm.
We have to make this match this.
so the motion would be to accept section 3.5.2 with the noted waivers for items 8 and 9. That would be the motion. This is the stormwater and erosion plans and technical and financial capacity.
Where's the 8 and the 9?
3.5.2, 0.8, and 0.9. Yes.
We're not requiring structural drawings either, right?
Yes, correct. So that should be a waiver as well.
We're not really signing off on a map.
There is actually a map to sign off, yes.
That red picture that you supplied, that's gonna be our, okay.
Carrie, you're welcome to sit down if you want while we
Yeah,
go
sorry.
through this.
All right, thank you.
If we have to go through the scary, you'd have to go through it too. Structural drawings is a waiver, map by engineer or architect, contour drawing lines of 10 feet, is that what we have on the?
Yeah,
this
those
map?
those are 2 feet each.
Okay, so is that yes or a waiver? This is not an engineer or architect's drawing, right?
Well, for item 2, that's just for the cover sheet that you all have. Or on the bottom of it, it would list all the names of the people, the engineers, the architects and all that stuff, but none are provided, so it's still acceptable.
It's waived.
No, it's just acceptable as presented. It's not really waived because there are no other professionals involved. So he's technically provided the names of the professionals involved.
Somebody else has to put forward this thing because I am now confused.
The motion would be to accept section 3.5.2 with waivers for 6, 8, and 9.
And that's this 3.5.
Yes. Yeah, that one I didn't.
This is hard to review because I don't have a copy of the land use ordinance with me, and I just have this statement here, and I don't know what it means.
Let me,
So it just says not applicable due to no structures being proposed. What is being asked for at 3.5.2.6?
you also have a copy of the warrant, but 3.5.2 starts here, and you can start with here.
Building and structure drawings.
Well, they're reviewing that. I do have a question. The additional thoughts that Chief Smeltzer had addressed a site visit. Does that get addressed here, or is that something that's outside of this?
So when we go through all the sections, there would be one final approval, and we would list any conditions that should be addressed.
So for 3.5.2.6, we don't need to have structural drawings for the approval that we are trying to do right now. But there was obviously a discussion of changing some structure in the building to put in some trap doors and stairways and things. That's going to be required for a building permit, but it's not required for our approval tonight for anything that, it doesn't affect any decisions that we're making. Okay. I'll move to accept 3.5.2 with the waivers for 0.6, 0.8, 0.9.
For a second, Mark seconded. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Jim, I see your hand up, and Brendan. All right, so that's unanimous. This is where it does have to get to the individual ones, unfortunately. Section 7.1, buffer areas.
Let's wait.
Believe
It's not
Yes.
applicable?
not applicable, so we will-
Of course, will comply. So what are we saying about that?
it would just be accepted. It would be applicable, so you vote to approve it.
It's just okay. Is this kind of a stand thing, electrical standards for the building?
Board just has to make sure that the equipment's not gonna cause a power outage, but you've been told what the equipment is. There were questions about this. This would be the time we would just ask about the equipment and everything.
I seem to think everything's okay. so
And
we
Carrie has noted that it's gonna be upgraded, so if you believe it's okay, then you would just accept it. Or approve it, I should say.
Or waive it. Not waive it? Waive it as an issue? This is what I'm
No,
really having trouble with.
it's
What are we saying by doing this? Or it's become a non-issue? We don't think it's an issue because of the information we
You
got?
believe with the information you have.
Yeah.
That the applicant is going to be complying with the standards.
Okay. And I believe that. So what would I write here? What would be written there?
Applicable. And you vote to approve.
Applicable means that, of course, these electrical standards are applicable. Okay, well, I'll get over this eventually.
Again, this is something we can discuss in the house.
We've lost you again.
This.
We lost you again.
What did you say?
He just didn't hear. So I was just saying that if to get through the nitty gritty of these things, they can be discussed during the housekeeping items.
And it's not just me that can't hear. If I can't hear, then it's not going out over the webcast, and Susan can't hear for the minutes. So
I understand.
Should we bring the other mic back down?
that would help. Good idea, Barbara. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we're not in a historic village, right?
Correct. That's a waiver.
Yay. That one's easy. Okay. Net develop, that's a non-issue as well, right?
Well, not developable acreage. It's just providing the information. So that's fine. That's applicable. All right, so
Max, do we have anything from Jeff at the tavern?
I have
saying that
not received any public comments for this application.
Okay.
And I have not received any response from the Maine Historic Preservation Commission for this application.
Okay, so steps have been made to ameliorate noise issues, so how do we respond to that?
It would just be a vote to say the standards have been met.
So it's applicable.
Yes. Unless it's specifically saying this is not applicable or we are requesting a waiver, then it is applicable.
I don't think that we have any conflicts about this. I think we're just sort of confused about the process right now.
Yeah.
Can we
totally.
just move to accept the applicant's proposed response to everything in section 7, article 7?
Yes, we don't have to go, you don't have to approve each individual one. If people want to say, approve Article 7 with noted waivers for ...
We're just processing through which is a waiver, which is applicable when we're going through these individually.
I can, yeah. So a waiver is something that would typically be applicable. However, there's a conflict, and so they don't think it's necessary, or they don't think it's necessary to provide that information. For example, if someone was on Route 1 and we have a requirement for a 15-foot vegetative site buffer or vegetative buffer, the applicant might know, well, I would like a waiver on that because that's going to interfere with my site distance that DOT wants me to keep. So that would be a waiver request. Not applicable would be the historic village essentially, where this is not in the historic village, so that would not be applicable. So this can be accepting Article 7 with waivers for 7.1 and 7.4.
In 713, or you have to get that letter from every application. You have to get a letter from
Or
historical sites.
for planning board meetings and whenever there is potential for historic development. Well, it's being developed in a historic area.
But nothing's being dug up, or, there's no disturbance outside the building walls.
So you don't believe you need to hear from the State Historic Preservation Office, then you may accept
I
it.
would think that would be I was gonna say waiver, but you're saying we should accept it?
It can be a waiver. It can be a waiver.
God, is it me? So there are 3 things on this Article 7 section, right?
Yep. 7 point,
Buffer, historical village, and archaeological historic sites.
yes. Everything else would be accepted. Is there a motion to approve?
A motion to approve Article 7
With the
with the
noted waivers?
exceptions of for 7.1, 7.4, and 0.13. Is that correct?
Yep.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? And Jim, I see the hand up.
Yep.
All right.
He's got that hand on top of his head in the screen there.
Yeah. Now Article 8, actually a lot easier. Stormwater, that was already requested as a waiver earlier. Same with the erosion control plan because there's no construction. The hydrogeologic assessments, that is a waiver because he is not using 2,000 gallons of water per day. Phosphorus control would be a waiver because he is not within the watershed of a Great Lake. Soils would be a waiver because there's no construction. Air and water pollution, that's just noted for the booth.
You skipped over water quality. That's waiver too, right? 8.4. Water quality impacts.
You can note that as a waiver, but that's more of just him saying that what I'm doing is not going to impact the water quality.
So
This is specifically groundwater.
Right.
Okay.
Uh,
I'm sure it's on city sewer, so.
Yeah, both, it's on sewer and water.
Yeah.
Then,
So I know my comment has nothing to do with sewer and water, but looking at 8.8, I got thinking about another aspect of this that we haven't really spoken to yet. And that's whether or not a woodworking shop is an appropriate member of the community on Main Street there. It's primarily retail, food and beverage, professional offices. Do we want to introduce manufacturing? Does it fit?
what are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting we talk about it. I'm just, I'm thinking about what's downtown, what makes a downtown area thrive, and whether or not this business would be a attribute to the downtown area as a whole.
so
It beats having empty space, but
It's an allowable use.
Yeah, it's allowable use and it's activity.
well, and
It's
And
business.
Brennan, you have my copy of the ordinance, but correct me if I'm wrong, that language is talking about mainly construction that would disrupt the view and the actual, like, beginning with habitat, wetlands and whatnot.
Max, I
Yeah,
led
that's-
off with the fact that it has nothing to do with 8.8. Just reading about it, reading the heading got me thinking about that particular aspect, okay?
Okay,
Well, the guidance from the training that Max and I were at a couple weeks ago about this is if you have a problem with the allowable uses that is in your land use ordinance, to change the ordinance. It's an allowable use. Do we really need to adjudicate that here?
right.
Exactly. No, it's a good question, but it's kind of a larger question
Yeah, yeah.
for the town to address. You know, and basically how to attract different businesses to downtown too is another one. I mean, to have a catering business in town that's not open to the public, you know, it's a pretty storefront, but it doesn't serve the public directly.
That's true. Yeah.
There's, you know, there's lots of things like that, that not much we can do about it. Interesting problem, though.
Yes, it is. Okay. I just thought it deserved a few minutes of conversation.
That's
Yeah,
not,
I agree.
so in terms of waivers, it would be 8.1 stormwater management, 8.2 erosion control, 8.3 hydrogeologic assessment of groundwater impacts, 8.5 phosphorus control, 8.6 soils, and then 8.11 buffer requirements for water quality protection. Everything else is usually something that should be shown on a site map or be addressed as this is not going to cause these issues.
So even though there isn't really within 250 feet of a river, stream, brook, or wetlands, we write applicable, next 8.10.
Yes, because that's supposed to note the closest river, stream, brook, and wetland. And that's noted in the application to be the Madomic River, essentially 400 feet away from the building.
So since we have all this and the more specific information in this already, what does this do? Where does this go?
This is just more of my personal checklist.
Okay, this is just, it gets attached to the
Yes,
document
Yes.
or,
this
but
is
this
gonna,
is, but why don't we sign off on this? It would be free to this. This is more specific. Well, how does this help someone late in 10 years review this project?
The application should be attached to it.
Yes,
yes. And this is just to note that the planning board did review all the standards essentially.
okay. I know there was a good reason though.
My only concern with the response to Article 8 is with the spray booth. And I
Mhm.
realize that the way that the VOC outputs with your spray booth is sort of very intense right at the outlet, and then everything just sort of dissipates into the atmosphere. There's a lot of, there's people that live in all those buildings. I could definitely see there being odor complaints at times from that, depending on the intensity of what it is that you're spraying in there. As long as the way that the ordinance reads, as long as it complies with the standards set by the DEP, then it's fine. I don't think that we have any way of really knowing at this point what the outputs would be from the spray booth there. I know that it's a very difficult thing to legislate around. I don't know if we should have some sort of condition on this approval related to the local acceptance of the effects at the spray booth there.
Or that it's, did I get it right? It's like it's a piece of equipment that you've used since 2001? I mean, is this the,
I've had the spray booth since I started shopping.
but and you mentioned a filter and all that stuff. Is that all, is that like the best quality filter one can get for what, as far as what's going out?
For that use, yeah, the thing is with what I'm spraying, because a lot of times I get lumped into, like, people think auto body shop. Well, those guys are, I'm not on par with the volume that they're putting out, or some of the solvent base that they use is different. But the one thing I can say is, I've given a lot of thought as to location for the spray booth. With that in mind, like, okay, there are neighbors, I don't want to, and the way I'm proposing it to be installed, it's coming out that garage door and going straight down to the ground. And I stood out back a few times, so like, and I'm not trying to put anyone under the bus, but like, Narrow's Tavern, they're cooking. That odor takes, that would wipe out anything that I'd be producing. Just having that. So, I'm not under, I'm not regimented where I'm like, okay, I refuse to accept updated finishes, or like if water-based stuff gets better, absolutely. I'd love to not, have to spray that stuff. But so I stay up to speed with new finishes as they're progressing. And eventually, knock on wood, I say, hey, solvents are a thing of the past.
I don't know how you write that.
I had a situation recently where I was working at a shop and there were offices above the shop. Nobody ever had a problem with anything until tenants changed and somebody moved in that had a sensitivity to chemicals. And there was, a spray booth in this building and it turned into a whole row with the upstairs tenants and all that sort of thing. And it's most people, like you said, probably aren't going to care. I'm sure I wouldn't care. But if it turns into a situation where there's multiple people in town and, why did the planning board approve this? I think that the way that the language is written in here is just fine, as long as it complies with the DEP standards. We're not asking for anything more or less. I think probably you can meet those standards very easily. But there's definitely going to be an odor there. Your filters catch particulates. They don't catch VOCs.
Right.
So you'll always be able to smell that odor coming out of there, no matter how well you filter it. There's no solution for that.
So is there any other discussion on Article 8?
I don't think so.
So the motion would be to accept Article 8 with waivers for 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, 8.5, 8.6, and 8.11. Is there a motion?
I motion that we accept Article 8 as just described by Max.
That's probably what this will turn into.
You did a great job,
Is
Max.
there a second
I'll second that.
discussion? All those in favor? I see Jim with your hand up.
Yep.
Okay. Article 9, hopefully this will be quick. Traffic impact analysis would be a waiver. Street access it's off of Friendship Road, which there's nothing else to it. And then parking and loading, it's somewhat not applicable because it's just in the downtown district and that does not require it to the use to follow Article 9.3 parking and loading standards. So I guess that would be a waiver on that one. So this is really just 9.2 we're talking about.
9.3, the parking, he did mention in the future,
Yeah.
potentially parking beside the building. Would that be something he would have to come back? Or is that something we need to deal with?
I guess that would be more on a condition that larger vehicles would be, as Carrie described, meeting off-site. If that changes your acceptance of this application, pretty much.
No, I just didn't know if he decided to park sometime, create a parking area, or is that going to be a change that you would need to?
It doesn't really change it. 9.3 is just, Carrie has his one car, maybe two if his dad's there. He might park in the public parking lot. He might get an agreement from whoever privately owns the Worcester parking lot to park there. He might just park on Friendship Road at all times. That'll be up to him. So with that, it would be accepting Article 9 with a waiver for 9.1 and 9.3. Motion? Oh, and yeah, sorry, Barbara, that one was,
That's part of that?
yeah, that's part of 9.3.
Okay.
So don't worry about that.
Okay.
Is there a motion to accept Article 9?
I motion we accept it exactly as Max just described.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Jim's thumb up. All right. Home stretch, I swear. Are there any conditions for approval that the board would like to state? I think Chief Smeltzer in his letter noted a site visit that he would like to do and for a lockbox to be installed onto the structure. I don't know if Carrie has any issues with those two items.
They take forever to get. Order it now. It takes forever.
I'll send you that information tomorrow.
Mm.
But are there any other conditions?
Nope.
All right. So the motion would be to accept the application as presented with the conditions for one, a lockbox would be installed and Fire Chief Smeltzer is granted a site visit before operation.
Can I jump in first?
Yep.
Carrie, you mentioned the door, 4x8. And Jim brought up, the village and, what fits in and that kind of thing. Is this going to be a wood edge door or a modern glass thing?
Oh, it's mahogany.
Okay.
So it's gonna have, I'm gonna have like a glass section so you can see in, but no, this is,
Okay. So it's not,
it's not gonna look very commercial.
it's not a mall door or something.
Oh, no.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. You want to repeat that?
So unless there's any other conditions, it would be to accept the application as presented with the following conditions. One, a lockbox would be installed with the approval of Fire Chief Smeltzer. And two, Fire Chief Smeltzer is given a site visit as specified in his letter to the board.
Motion to approve
Second.
this application with, including those two items, the lockbox and the site visit by.
All right. Any discussion? Yeah, Johnny seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Jim with his hand up. It's approved. So Carrie, I will send you an email tomorrow to go over just post planning board items. But we're all set.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for putting up with this.
So Max, as a point of information, what is it we, the planning board now are going to sign?
So
That site plan.
yeah, there is the site plan that was provided with everyone. There should be a signature block on the bottom of it.
Yep.
Yep. So that would just be signed, but, and I'll include the, nope,
All I've got with the signature block is
nope,
this.
not that one. It's in the actual application. It should be the last page, I believe. I think.
All right, well, we have something to sign. Okay.
And I actually will have to update that one to include the two conditions. So that will be at a later time.
Oh, okay.
No,
All right.
You want to just handwrite that in under comments?
I'm sorry. Yes, I got it. This one.
Sign it
Yeah,
off?
yeah, but I can update it. All right. So that was it. Thank you, Gary.
All right, thank you.
All right. So, I do see it's 8 o'clock, and I'm sorry, everyone. We do have two people here from, for representing 1607 Atlantic Highway. Very brief request, very brief request. So whoever wants to just speak.
I will. So, hi, I'm Jessica Pooley. I'm actually a realtor. I own the William Ravis franchise up by Moody's, and Penny Dosty is my client. And so I'm just going to give you a very brief framework, and then Penny can answer questions, but this is to help with a little stage fright. So, and this is much more exciting than wood cabinets and trailer parks, I promise. So Penny owns the Cornhole Connections in Thomaston, Maine, and she's been a cornhole enthusiast for many years. And with that passion, opened the little retail store in Thomaston, which has done amazingly well. And part of what she does in addition to the retail store is she travels all over the mid-coast to run tournaments for other enthusiasts, which are really fun and awesome. But with the end of the warm weather, it's ending the season. So Penny, Cornhole,
Yeah.
2 boards, 2 holes.
Bean
bags with
bag.
beads in it. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, I'm with you now.
Yeah, and there's points, and this part, that part is gonna be Penny's expertise. I'm just here to help with the whole, let's put this together. So Penny came to see me to say, I don't want to stop doing tournaments just because it's snowing out. What can we do? So we looked at a variety of buildings, and the one that I thought would be the most beneficial to her and also brings something awesome to Waldeboro is the Jameson building that most recently housed the Sheepscot Physical Therapy. So we walked through the door and Penny drank the Kool-Aid I was serving and agreed that it was perfect. And so after many weeks of talking it over with Max and Gordon, determined that it actually is perfect. There's room to host several sets of boards at a time. I think 5 sets at a time.
4 now.
Maybe 4 because of the bathroom. Okay. A retail area and also a vending area for a couple arcade games for people who are waiting and cold beverages. And then Penny receives her inventory mostly from Wicked Cornhole. That's her biggest supplier. But one of the things she wants to do to enhance her offerings, cut costs a little bit, is to assemble some of those in the back of the building. There's like a loading area where the tops can be brought in and we can have a little light assembly. I don't want to call it manufacturing because really they're just assembling it. But anyway, lots of cornhole activity to go on there and allow for a year-round recreational opportunity in Waldeboro. And
There'd be some
that's
group
it.
events where-
Sorry?
Can there be some group events where you'd have like a lot of people in the building?
Yeah, well, you can only have 4 at a time, 4 per set. So you could have, if there are 4, you could have 16 people at a time. You may have a few others shopping the retail or hanging out in the lounge, but
You're not gonna have
generally-
International cornhole.
No, no, no,
competition
no.
or that kind of-
we think probably 20.
Yeah, don't rule it out yet.
Right. She's advocating for it to be an Olympic sport, so do not set limits on Penny. But anyway, we think approximately 18 to 20 people at any given time would be about the average. And did you get a copy of the DOT letter?
Yes.
Yeah, so everything it's just a simple change of use for the building.
Is it nighttime too? Like what would
Yeah.
the hours be?
11 to
11 to 9
Yeah.
is my plan.
yeah.
7 days.
Well,
I've given the update. It's time for you to
Okay.
answer questions or the overview. You okay?
just gotta get my meter work. There may be times when a tournament might go over, a few minutes, maybe even a half hour, but I'd like to have everybody done by 9 so that I can go home. So, but yeah, it's a huge sport right now, and it would, it would bring people from all directions.
Well, it seems like you get plenty of parking there.
Where's the building? I'm sorry, I'm making.
Right across the street.
Here.
Town hall, where
If you go-
the physical therapy place was.
Yeah. John,
The old Maytag repairman building.
Yeah.
Oh, it's that.
not roadside diner, but the one on the left.
Oh,
The big concrete
so
block building.
that wasn't, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a good spot, okay.
So
Yeah, and like I said, the building's perfect.
Spend an hour in there.
Well, lately, so have we.
Yes. Yeah, so, I mean, it's pretty, we,
Now, are you gonna try to buy it or lease it?
I'm leasing it right now, but I'm going to try to buy it.
So just focusing on the matter at hand, the reason this is all happening is because last week I have to send out my notices so that it's in the weekly paper and neighbors have 7 days to respond and you all have 7 days to review materials. By the time I had sent everything out, I think Jessica came in like an hour or 2 hours after.
Just missed you.
So they just missed the deadline for tonight. So what is the
Deadline for a pre-app or an app?
for an actual application?
Oh, okay.
And the reason for the urgency is because all of the driving around tournaments they're they're done after
Yeah.
Labor Day and because of the weather. And so if we had to wait another month, it would mean 2 months before she can start scheduling tournaments.
Plus, I really don't want to have to sign another lease at the building I'm at to have, to move over here.
How many tournaments do you have per year, per season?
Um,
Like 1 a week, 2 a week?
we're gonna do leagues that will probably be 4 nights a week.
That's all I-
Because we want to have a kids league, a women's league, a men's league, and a couples league.
I got you.
Because there's a lot of kids that just love cornhole. We have a 5-year-old at the Legion that just, he beats it out. It's kind of embarrassing, but.
So
Yeah.
for this application, it is, I just talked with Penny today over the phone, and we do have a complete application.
Yeah.
I do have to do my 1 site visits just as a formality on it, but
What
should
do
be
you
all
call this, recreation center?
recreation. So, well, it's a mixture of things. It's a recreational facility, it's a retail space,
Yeah.
and it's a minor event center.
Yeah.
So it's checking a lot of boxes off. If you think today's checklist was long, wait until next week.
So which box alarms you? I mean, which box sends up red flags?
I-
It doesn't sound like anything is going to, in terms of numbers of people
No, I-
parking or.
Yeah, DOT had to get the letter first. That was the big thing, just before it comes to the planning board. And then everything else is stuff I'm just gonna have to do with the site visit. I personally do not see too much of an issue, but I'm saying that now without doing the site visit and going too deep into this application.
The only question I have about the site is there's multiple, if not like, hundreds of feet long curb cut. I mean, it's almost like a little bit confusing about how you go in and out to a park there. I don't know if this is the time to, at some point, maybe it should get addressed. And there's also access to the house that's behind.
Mhm.
They have it right away.
Yes, and Heather was supposed to
She
come
was gonna
tonight,
join
but,
us tonight. She's a neighbor and she actually plays cornhole too, so.
and I've worked with Heather for 15 years and she has absolutely no issue with it,
So
so.
I'm just thinking like, 20 or 24 cars.
Yeah,
where
they
they're
would be
all-
on the other side.
Okay.
So the people would park in that, so that roadside is, that's not open, correct?
Right.
So was that where you park or they?
No,
park in
we'd
front?
park on the other side of the building.
That
So the whole other end.
that would be
Yeah.
shown on the site map.
Yeah,
Okay. I
So-
didn't-
because what I,
Some painted sites there. There is parking,
Yeah.
painted parking sites, but I think most everybody would park there and that might be for employees.
yeah, I think on the side where Heather is where the employees will
Yeah.
park.
So the question is, the next planning board meeting is October 13th. And September has an additional Thursday for the month. So we're waiting about 5 weeks to get to the next planning board meeting. So the question is whether, well, correct me if I'm wrong, you're requesting a special planning board meeting for the application.
Yeah,
I do have a complete application. I can do my site visit next week. But just for our standards, putting out notices, informing the butters and everything, it means it would have to be at least 2 weeks away. But this is why I sort of said in the email last week, the planning board does make that decision. I can't make that decision for you. It's up to you.
You're saying the 20, you're asking if we will do another meeting the 22nd or the 29th? Is that what you're asking?
That's what is being asked by the applicant.
Thank you, Max.
Is that something that we have done in the past, or is that some precedent for that, for us to do additional meetings?
Yeah, we've done that.
But we don't have to.
You don't have to, but we've done it.
Right.
I mean, there is- we'll get home till 9 o'clock, and it's already late.
And that's
I'll
why,
make you a deal, Max. We can skip this, the next meeting.
I'll have a more streamlined guideline. How about that?
Yeah.
Gotta negotiate hard around here.
like I said, my biggest thing is I don't really want to have to sign another lease, and the lease runs out the end of September. And I really don't want to have to close my retail.
Right.
Yeah.
Austin.
Yeah. And I
So,
don't
and
really
and
wanna-
Max, we're looking at the 3 weeks from now, the 29th, excuse me, Penny.
Hold on. So at the earliest, a board meeting could happen on the 22nd, because next week I have to send out all the notices. So 22nd could be the earliest a meeting could be done. You can do the 29th, you can do the 6th, and then the 13th is the actual meeting, a regularly scheduled meeting.
October 13th.
October 13th is the next regularly.
Right, but that's not gonna help her.
Right.
Right, but
That's-
So I wanna have-
that's why I'm just.
Right,
listing
I'd
off
like to
dates.
help her. I can go early. I mean, it sounds like a great idea.
Well, I think in part, I agree, Johnny, and also we're not going to finish the rest of this agenda because it's getting to be late
Right.
again.
We're fast.
Yeah.
So we've got unfinished business that we can take care of 2 or 3 weeks from now, as well as helping Penny out a little bit.
22nd would
So
be great.
I'm in favor of doing it. Anybody have a conflict with that? And as I say that, I gotta tell you, if it's the 29th, I won't be here. I am here the 22nd, but I'm,
Now that we have more than 4 people,
Yeah.
because I wasn't 100% sure I would be here. So if we're both gone, you guys could handle it, right?
22nd, I have a conflict.
You do.
29th, I'm good.
Other board members' thoughts?
I don't see a
I can
problem.
do either day.
I don't know my work schedule, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I couldn't really say. right
Yeah.
at the
And I would
I
have to
can't.
check with Sarah because she's not here tonight.
And I can't do the 29th. You can't do the 22nd, Jim?
no, 22nd, I'm good. 29th, I'm not.
29th, I'm out too, so.
So Mark is not good on the 22nd. Barbara, Jim, you're not good on the 29th, but you're good on the 22nd.
So we could have a quorum on
Oh.
the second.
Sounds like you get some work done, Max. Get us ready for the
Don't I
22nd.
always? Don't I always? Meeting on the 22nd.
All right,
Well,
thank
thank you.
very, very much.
And I hope to see
Thank
you all come play cornhole.
They all
I'll
get
be
a
there.
complimentary round,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That we have recorded, and I'm choosing to put that in the minutes, that means you have to give that.
You get 2, Max.
Yeah.
What's actually in the bag itself? Corn?
We don't use corn.
So-
Used to be corn.
Because the rodents really liked that.
You can discuss those things when the meeting is concluded.
I made you like.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's
Thank
little
you.
resin beans. No corn.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We look
Welcome.
forward
Good
to
luck.
it. Thank you.
I'll send an email out. I'll probably do a site visit on Monday.
Okay. Yeah, just let me know what time and I'll be there.
Sounds good.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
everyone.
much, guys. Thank you.
All right.
Boy, do I feel out of it. What the heck?
I know.
Nothing about it. I just catching a pickleball. for crying out loud. Okay, what next, Max?
There are the minutes, and then there's discussion on new members, remote voting policy, and land use ordinance revisions, but I do not know if everyone wants to try and power through them very quickly, or if you want to save it to the next meeting.
My suggestion is, I think we've been through the July 28th minutes. If we don't have any comments on those, we can quickly get those approved.
Okay.
I mean, I know that that was one, Max, you and I both weighed in on with Susan. And I think we have enough folks that were at that meeting.
Was I there? I have no idea.
Yes.
I was there in July. I'm sure I read it.
And if you're not comfortable, we're not comfortable, we'll do it the next time.
No, I wasn't there. I was sick as a dog.
Well,
So I waived myself. I can't vote on July, so you guys do it.
do we all want to proceed with this, or do we want to table this?
Grab Penny's mic, please, off the podium. Nobody can hear.
Do we all want to go through these items, or do people want to table it to the next meeting?
I think the next meeting will go quickly if it's just Penny. And it's
Sounds good.
almost 8:30. I vote to table.
It is gonna be just Penny, right? You're not gonna stick another one in?
Just Penny.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So motion to table all items.
All right. So we're adjourned then, Jim?
We're adjourned. Yep.
All right.
Thank you all for your patience and participation.